I think we can all agree that the guy who brings Chick-fil-A to you is the best. Whenever someone brings Chick-fil-A to work, that person is inherently just a little bit better. And proponents of the social exchange theory would argue that the reason for that is because we view most, if not all, of our relationships through a lens, sort of a cost-benefit analysis. So whenever we're in a relationship, whether it's platonic or friendship or a work relationship, we view it through, one, what we get out of the relationship, but also what we put into it. So if you're in a romantic relationship, for example, say you are someone who likes pretty intelligent people, both pretty and intelligent. The proponents of this theory would argue that the reason that you like pretty people is maybe because whenever you go out with a pretty person, they see you're seen with a pretty person, so it reflects back onto you positively. Or you like intelligent people because it makes you feel more intelligent whenever you have conversations with them. Now, proponents of this would argue that this is the reasons, and many people would disagree. But there's also a downside to this, to where there's a lower level, and sociologist Sharon Parsons Millers argues that there's a minimum threshold to where if the relationship, for whatever reason, is not meeting this minimum threshold, then we're not really going to work to maintain that relationship. So if you've ever been in a relationship, I'm sure some of you have, where you feel like you're putting more into the relationship than you're getting out, like you're the only one working on the relationship, then you're more likely one to end that relationship, or also to not work as hard on that relationship. And this works for almost all relationships. So there's also platonic relationships, like with our pets. Most people here have pets, especially me. I have a beautiful dog named Keisha. She's the best thing in the world, and if you say otherwise, I will fight you. And there are reasons for this within this theory, and Bonnie Berkowitz from the Washington Post wrote a statistic where we spend about $60 billion a year lavishing our pets in gifts and foods and whatever, but we also spend $7.5 billion getting rid of animals that are very similar to our pets. So things like raccoons, wolves, whatever it be, they're arguably just as capable of surviving in the wild without our help than our pets are, but for whatever reason, we spend all this money on our pets. And the reason for that is for what we get out of the relationship with our pets. So, many people argue that the reason that we have such attachments to pets is because it makes us feel better about ourselves. We have a dog. We like the feeling of taking care of our dog. We like the fact that it loves us. Now, if I was to show you this beautiful, cute little puppy, it's adorable, right? It's a cute puppy. Now, I show you a picture of this wolf.
Ooh, that's scary.
Yeah, it's not as cute. Now, if you could only choose to feed one of those animals, most of us would choose to feed the puppy. Even if they're equally need food, like they're about to starve, all of us would choose to feed the puppy. Now, proponents of this theory, the social exchange theory, would argue that the reason for that is because, again, with the puppy, it requires more of our attention. So we're getting more out of that. We like the feeling of being the protector, where a wolf, it may be really hungry, but for whatever reason, when we feed a wolf, we don't really feel like we're protecting that wolf. We feel like we just gave a wolf some food, and that's that. And that, again, it's the same with platonic relationships, and also why the same thing goes with the bare minimum, the minimum threshold, to where if you had a dog, say, and whenever you got your dog, just imagine if every time you did anything nice for it, it just rolled its eyes or barked at you or did something to make it clear that it just did not like you. Like your dog just doesn't like you. You would probably feel a lot different about your dog. And it's the same dog, it's just for whatever reason doesn't like you, so you're not getting that unconditional love that you normally get from your dog. So it's something that you're not getting from that relationship, so you're less likely to put in the work for that relationship. And this even goes for work relationships as well. Many people argue that the reason that we maintain our work relationships one is for networking. We feel like if we maintain certain relationships, and it might help our career in the future. Well, that's a decent argument to make. I think there's a lot of evidence to back that up. But there's also been theories, one by Emily Heapsby, professor of organizational behavior at the University of Rhode Island, who did a study where people, whenever they overshared in work relationships, a lot of times it would harm their work relationships instead of helping it. And that's because we have certain ideas of the work relationship, and if we think that it's going to help us, then we're more likely to put in effort. But if someone overshares, then maybe they share something a little too much, and we think, oh, maybe they don't have their act together, and so maybe they won't help my work life as much, so we don't put in as much effort. And finally, there was a study with the Asian Pacific Journal of Management by Social Trust, who found that people that you trust, you're more willing to share your secrets. And we're in an economy that's driven by data, so your knowledge it's an asset at this point in our economy. And so you're not willing to share certain things because if everybody knows the stuff that you know in your job, then you're not as special and you have less value. But whenever you're friends with someone, you're more willing to share that because you're almost sacrificing something of yours into the relationship because you feel like you're going to get something out of it. And so I think there's a lot of this theory. It applies to almost all relationships. And there are some doubts that say there's certain relationships where we're not getting out of much and it doesn't apply as much. But overall, I think it has a lot of evidence. And one thing I would take in the future, if you feel like your relationship's not going as well, maybe be the guy who brings Chick-fil-A. Because again, that guy's awesome. And then he is both metaphorically and literally bringing more to the table. And that is all. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I'm going to lap this so we know when the 3 minutes start. I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that the relationship that you have with your pet is beneficial to you because you get the feeling of protection over it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's as far as that relationship goes?
No, I think, and that's one of the flaws of the social exchange theory, is there are certain situations where what we're getting out of the relationship isn't as clear-cut. And so I think it's definitely not to say that, for example, like love and all that isn't real. I think it's more just an explanation of the way we do interact in those relationships. So, say your dog, if you love your dog, and if it, for some reason, like it gets really weak, and it just can't provide the things that used to provide for you in that relationship, I think at that point we would still continue that relationship, even though it's not providing what it once did. Because the social exchange here, I feel like it helps to explain things, but it's not the complete picture. It's just a portion of it. Yes, Casey.
Okay, so you said, basically when you said, would you rather feed a dog versus a wolf?
A cute puppy is what I said, but yes.
Or a cute puppy,
yes.
Do you think that you could build trust with the wolf over time?
I think you could.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that nobody would feed the wolf, because wolves, we got dogs and wolves.
Right.
We got dogs and wolves, so obviously wolves have their merit. But I think in regards to this theory, it's just that wolves aren't needed. They don't need us as much as the puppies because we've genetically bred puppies to need us, basically. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason for that is because we kind of dictated the relationship to where we would get more out of it.
Right.
So there is value in feeding a wolf. It's not to say that you wouldn't feed a wolf, but it's a different type of dynamic in the relationship. Are there any more
questions? I would
questions?
like to say, I'm pretty sure the picture of the wolf is from The Gray with Liam Neeson.
Yeah, it's one of the more alpha wolves I could think of. So you're right in that.
What about cats, though? No, because cats don't really treat you like a dog does. They just kind of sit around.
Right, you're right. And it depends on the situation. Like there are some cats where a lot of cats, the stereotype that cats do not show any affection is not true. Like a lot of cats do show affection, and then in that situation, the dynamic would be very similar. Like we're getting the same thing out of it. But there are some cats where, like you're right, they show very little affection. And then I think it would more be just we're protecting a small animal, and we're probably because of our one relationship with dogs, but also children in general, we're predisposed to care for animals because it makes us feel better about ourselves. And I believe that is all the time we have, unless there are any other questions.
No.
I thank you all for coming, and have a good day.
All right.